even though Mauritius never owned them. And we're going to pay, now that Mauritius owns them, we're going to pay Mauritius. They said, United Kingdom, you're an anti-colonialist, you should feel guilty, you should feel bad, and you need to give the Chagos Islands away.
He is in Britain, and all he does is walk and leave us behind. Kennedy's scathing assessment of Starmer just sent shockwaves through Westminster after the PM's controversial $9 billion payment to Mauritius over the Chagos Islands. In what many are calling a diplomatic disaster, Starmer has effectively surrendered British control of strategically vital territory, housing a US military base crucial for global security operations. Kennedy's message isn't just criticism, it's a warning about Britain's diminishing role on the world stage under Starmer's leadership. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. What Keir Starmer is quietly surrendering in the Indian Ocean has left both John Kennedy and Trump's incoming administration absolutely livid.
That he wants to give the Chagos Islands, with our military base, to Mauritius. And he said, we will lease you the base that you built, which we, Mauritius, now own, back to you.
Starmer's decision to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius represents far more than a simple territorial handover. It's a diplomatic catastrophe with staggering financial implications. The most shocking aspect, Mauritius has never actually owned these islands, yet Starmer is prepared to hand them over, along with a £9 billion payment that sources indicate could potentially double to an £18 billion payment as negotiations continue. Why would Starmer agree to such terms? This is where Kennedy's criticism cuts deep. The Louisiana senator hasn't minced words, suggesting Starmer is looking after everybody else's country, while poor old Britain's left behind.
Wants to give it to him. And we said, wait a minute, we've got a military base here. According to the news reports, he wants not only £9 billion, he wants £18 billion.
It's a damning assessment of a Prime Minister Kennedy perceives as desperate to appease international opinions at the expense of British interests. The strategic implications cannot be overstated. Diego Garcia, the largest island in the Chagos archipelago, isn't just a remote tropical outpost, it's a vital military installation that forms a cornerstone of Western security operations across the Indian Ocean. The base facilitates critical US military activities, including airstrikes and intelligence gathering that directly impact Britain's own security interests. What's particularly troubling about Starmer's decision is how it blatantly contradicts established agreements. When Mauritius gained independence, it explicitly relinquished claims to this territory.
And Mr. Starmer says, well, I'm going to give all of the islands, including the military base, to Mauritius. Not only do I want the Mauritius Islands, but you're not paying us enough, United Kingdom and America.
Now, decades later, Starmer appears willing to unravel this arrangement without securing adequate protections for Britain's strategic interests. The reaction from across the Atlantic has been swift and severe. According to reports, very senior officials and advisors from the incoming Republican administration are appalled at this deal. This response suggests that Starmer's diplomatic maneuver could severely strain the special relationship with America, just as Trump prepares to retake the White House. Kennedy's assessment cuts to the heart of what many see as Starmer's fundamental leadership flaw, prioritizing international appeasement over protecting strategic national interests. By showing this level of weakness in negotiations, Starmer has inadvertently invited Mauritius to push for even more concessions, a pattern that Kennedy suggests reveals a disturbing lack of diplomatic fortitude.
Even though Mauritius never owned them, and we're going to pay, now that Mauritius owns them, we're going to pay Mauritius. They said, United Kingdom, you're an anti-colonialist, you should feel guilty, you should feel bad, and you need to give the Chagos Islands away.
Beyond the billions of pounds at stake, Kennedy's criticism of Starmer's Chagos Islands deal strikes at something far more fundamental: Britain's very identity as a global power. It genuinely feels as if Britain is dying, Kennedy laments, a statement that carries profound emotional weight coming from a politician not known for dramatic hyperbole. This sense of national decline stems from what Kennedy identifies as a dangerous pattern in Starmer's diplomatic approach. Rather than projecting strength and defending British interests, the Prime Minister appears driven by a misguided desire to be seen as the good guys on the international stage. This political correctness, this apparent compulsion to unbundle the last relics of empire, comes at an extraordinary cost to Britain's strategic position and taxpayers' wallets. What makes Starmer's capitulation particularly concerning is its timing. Just as Trump prepares to return to the White House, Starmer undermines one of Britain's strongest bargaining chips in the Anglo-American alliance. Diego Garcia isn't merely territory, it's one of the things we bring to the table in relations with the United States. By surrendering this strategic asset while paying billions for the privilege, Starmer has potentially weakened Britain's standing with its most important ally at the worst possible moment. Kennedy's comparison to the Falklands exposes a glaring inconsistency in Starmer's approach to sovereignty issues.
Need to give them to Mauritius, even though Mauritius never owned them. That's what's going on. Over time, I want to be fair, over time, for a military base that we built. What?
If you care so much about the sovereignty of the Falklands being in the hands of the Falkland Islanders, why not have a referendum of the Chagosians? Kennedy asks. This pointed question reveals how principles seem to shift depending on political convenience, rather than being applied consistently across British territories. The human dimension of this controversy remains largely overlooked. Lost in the discussion of billions and bases is whether Starmer's deal actually benefits the Chagosian people themselves, who have been displaced from their homeland for generations. Kennedy suggests that their voices have been silenced in Starmer's rush to appear progressive on the world stage. What emerges from Kennedy's criticism is a troubling picture of a Prime Minister more concerned with international perception than with defending British interests or truly addressing historical injustices. The precedent this sets could invite challenges to other British territories and further erode Britain's global standing. Kennedy's stark warning goes far beyond mere political disagreement. It strikes at the heart of Britain's identity on the global stage. The Senator's assessment that Starmer's Chagos Islands capitulation could destabilise the UK's international standing carries significant weight, especially considering the reaction from across the Atlantic. That senior officials within the incoming Republican administration are appalled by Starmer's deal signals serious trouble for future Anglo-American relations. This diplomatic misstep raises profound questions about Britain's trajectory under Starmer's leadership. Is this the beginning of a broader pattern of retreat from global responsibilities? The answer may shape Britain's future for generations. While Starmer appears focused on shedding what he perceives as imperial baggage, Kennedy suggests this approach undermines the very foundations of British influence. The choice between principled leadership and diplomatic surrender now looms large, with Britain's place in the world hanging precariously in the balance.